Prince Harry built Invictus to be untouchable, so why are whispers now saying the very thing he created might collapse because of him?
Huge news about Prince Harry and Invictus. His games could get cancelled.
Now this is seismic. This is royal story of the year. This is an unmitigated disaster for Harry. A nightmare on wheels. This is catastrophic. And the reason why is because Invictus is all he's got.
Boeing has, I believe, cut ties. Story for News Nation will come out later today about how Boeing was the huge sponsor. The contract has ended and they are not re-signing.
For 6 years, Prince Harry has stood in front of the world, repeating one message with unwavering certainty: the Invictus Games are his proudest achievement, his redemption arc, his proof. But suddenly, the tone has shifted. Quietly, uncomfortably, the same circles that once praised Prince Harry are now passing around a word that feels almost unthinkable: canceled. Not postponed, not delayed. Canceled, and not just anywhere, but Birmingham 2027. The very games Prince Harry fought to bring back to British soil. That alone should make you pause. Because when something this carefully protected starts to crack, it never begins loudly. It starts with whispers.
You know that African Parks, which is a good charity but mired in allegations of the abuse tribes in Africa.
Yeah.
Yikes. Well, Harry's on the board of that charity and used to run it. Then there's Centre Barley, another good charity that Harry lost control of following a bitter public row with Sophie Chandauka, who now controls the charity. It was his charity that he lost control of. And then there's Foundation, or whatever it's called, This Week, which has effectively been shut. There's no money. There's no... all the other charities were a disaster. Is Harry. Harry is Invictus. And you're telling me it could be cancelled.
Now here's where the story stops sounding like gossip and starts feeling dangerously real. Boeing, yes. Boeing, one of the biggest corporate giants in the world, a company that doesn't blink at multi-million-dollar commitments, quietly stepped away. No dramatic announcement. No scandalous exit speech. Just gone. And they're not alone. Sponsors aren't storming out, they're slipping away. And that's always worse. Because silence from powerful backers doesn't mean nothing happened. It means something happened that nobody wants to say out loud.
Massive, huge company. Not a company who are short of a few bob. They sponsored last year's, and the year before that, they pulled out of Birmingham. So that's one huge sponsor. Part of Harry coming to Birmingham this week, he was supposed to go and see his dad, he was supposed to have the kids. His other main reason was for the Invictus launch is to go and have meetings to try and drum up more support, drum up more sponsorship.
No, and we've said before that this return to the UK for the 1 year countdown is a non-event, like a nothing burger. And we've said, haven't we, what is this the countdown to? A diminished event which is losing sponsors left and right.
And suddenly the question shifts. It's no longer about funding, it's about optics, about who companies are willing to stand beside when the cameras flash. Because when brands walk away, it's rarely about money, it's about reputation. And here's the line echoing through royal and corporate circles right now: what if the fastest way to save Invictus is for Prince Harry to step away from it? Let that sink in. The founder, the face, the man who built it, now being discussed as the risk factor, the very thing pushing sponsors out.
Now, you've got this exclusive, this massive scoop that the whole thing could be pulled. It's truly shocking. The reason why is because this Invictus brand has been tainted by its association with the Sussexes. We know that everything they touch turns to mud. We've seen it in business, we've seen it with their broadcasting work, and now we're seeing it in the charity sector. Why should Boeing and other sponsors pump millions in when they're going to be associated with a couple who the public don't like, who the public don't trust, who often the public don't believe?
So let's follow the money, because money never lies, only people do. While Prince Harry was collecting applause, Paula Froelich was doing something far less glamorous but far more dangerous, reading the accounts line by line. And what she found doesn't look like a thriving charity. It looks like something off.
This is the very reason why everyone who originally worked on and set up Invictus no longer works there. Since leaving the royal fold, the foundation has become a cash cow for Harry and Meghan, and no doubt some others. It's all bubbling to the surface. And it is bubbling to the surface thanks to Paula Froelich Uncensored. She is our guest today. Her show at News Nation, she has been able to finally get these funding questions about the $63 million Invictus Games spend into the mainstream media.
The numbers hit like a shockwave. $63 million spent on the Vancouver and Whistler Games. That's roughly $118,000 per competitor. Compare that to similar events running on fractions of that budget, and suddenly the question becomes unavoidable: where did the money go? But it gets worse. In the same year that income rose by 41% and reserves swelled past $2 million, grants to veteran organizations were slashed by 63%. Read that again. More money coming in, less money going out to the very people the charity exists for. That's not just unusual, that's explosive.
The most recent games, held in Vancouver and Whistler in February 2025, brought together 543 wounded military veterans from 23 countries. The total cost 63.2 million Canadian, or approximately $118,352 per competitor. For comparison, the US Warrior Games, a similar competition for wounded American service members, runs on roughly $2 million a year. Germany's Invictus-style competition costs about $200,000 and involves half as many participants.
And when Paula Froelich kept digging, the trail didn't clarify, it got murkier. Redacted licensing fees, legal costs that mysteriously tripled, an unnamed American company sitting quietly in the accounts like a shadow nobody wants to explain. None of it proven illegal, but all of it unsettling. The kind of details that make sponsors suddenly remember they have somewhere else to be. Then there's Birmingham, a $26 million expectation hanging over a city already struggling financially. And how much has actually been raised? Around $4 million. That gap isn't just a problem, it's a warning sign. Because gaps like that don't stay gaps. They become headlines.
The numbers, Paula reports, raised red flags. In 2024, the foundation cut its direct grants to veteran organizations by 63%, from £534,973 to just £200,328. The same year that foundation income rose 41%, a new six-figure executive role was added, and cash reserves grew to $2.3 million.
And just when you think it's only about money, the narrative twists again. Tom Bauer steps in. And Tom Bauer doesn't just question finances, he questions the entire image. According to him, the focus inside the games has shifted. Not rehabilitation, not veterans, but Meghan Markle. Bling, not rehabilitation, he says, a line that lands harder than any financial report ever could, because numbers scare accountants, but image problems, they scare everyone.
Problem is that us here in the UK, us taxpayer fools, are committing funds to this. I can't believe this. Paula reports the next Invictus Games are scheduled for Birmingham in 2027. The UK government has committed up to £26 million in public funds, despite the city effectively declaring bankruptcy in 2023. It only exited that status in February of this year. With roughly 15 months to go, Birmingham has just 11 unnamed sponsors contributing an estimated £4 million combined.
Inside the 2025 Games, Bauer claims a nickname was circulating the Meghan Games, and whether true or denied, the damage is already done. Because once a narrative like that exists, it doesn't need proof. It just needs repetition. And repetition is exactly what's happening now. Even as Prince Harry's team calls the claims disgusting and disrespectful, the seed has already been planted. And here's the uncomfortable truth: sponsors don't wait for confirmation. They react to perception. And perception right now is shifting fast. Too fast. Because when the story stops being about wounded veterans and starts being about optics, branding, and controversy, something fundamental has already broken. And the question nobody wants to answer out loud is Invictus collapsing because of external pressure or because of what it has quietly become? And just when the numbers and narratives feel heavy enough. The story takes a turn that no spreadsheet can explain, because this is where Scott Snow enters, and suddenly this isn't just about Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, Paula Froelich, or Tom Bauer anymore. This becomes personal. Scott Snow, a decorated Canadian Navy diver, Special Forces, the kind of man the Invictus Games were built for, the kind of man Prince Harry has always said is the heart of everything. Scott Snow wasn't just another competitor. Scott Snow was featured, highlighted, presented as a face of Invictus itself, a symbol, a story, a purpose. But then something went wrong, quietly, almost invisibly. During a wheelchair event in Seldorf, Scott Snow reached for the ball and fell backward. No restraints. No protection, just impact. At first, Scott Snow thought it was nothing serious. That's what people like Scott Snow do, they push through. But when Scott Snow got home, the truth hit harder than the fall ever could. A fractured neck, fractured cervical and lumbar spine, torn quadricep, head trauma, the kind of injuries that don't just heal, they stay. Scott Snow ended up in a retirement facility at just 43. Let that settle. A man who once represented strength, resilience, survival, now relying on a fentanyl patch just to manage the pain. A single father they're drowning in physiotherapy bills. And here's the detail that changes everything. Scott Snow says after Invictus used Scott Snow's story, the responses stopped completely. Scott Snow reached out. Scott Snow emailed. Scott Snow tried again. And according to Scott Snow, nothing. No reply from Invictus. No reply from Prince Harry's office. Silence in a story like this feels louder than any accusation. Now, to be precise, Scott Snow's lawsuit is against the Canadian military, not Prince Harry. That matters. But perception doesn't separate legal responsibility from moral expectation. And when Scott Snow says Scott Snow felt abandoned, the question shifts again. Not legal. Human, because here's what sits uncomfortably beside that silence. Prince Harry, being celebrated globally, named a top leader in sport, praised for Invictus. The same window of time. The same story. Two completely different realities. One public, one painfully private. And then the numbers creep back in, almost mocking the situation. Athlete insurance for the games? Estimated between $250,000 and $1 million, against budgets in the tens of millions. Loose change, as some have called it. Loose change that might have changed everything for someone like Scott Snow. That contrast, it lingers. And just when the pressure feels contained, timing blows it wide open. On July 7th, Prince Harry loses the case against the Daily Mail publisher. 97 allegations dismissed. A major defeat. 2 days later, the Invictus cancellation whispers explode across media. Coincidence? Maybe. But in stories like this, timing is never just timing. Because suddenly, everything starts to connect. Prince Harry's legal battles, sponsor exits, financial questions, Scott Snow's story, all collapsing into one overwhelming narrative. And then comes Buckingham Palace. The situation escalates. Reports emerge that Buckingham Palace withdrew an offer. The Sussex camp pushes back. Words like liar begin to circulate. And now Prince Harry isn't just facing financial scrutiny. Prince Harry is in open conflict with Buckingham Palace, with King Charles at the center of it all. King Charles, watching from the other side of this growing storm. And in the middle of it, a planned family visit collapses. Meghan Markle stays back in California. Archie, Lilibet, not there. What should have been a quiet family moment becomes another headline, another fracture. And suddenly, the narrative tightens into something far more uncomfortable. Prince Harry at war with the press. Prince Harry in tension with Buckingham Palace. Prince Harry linked to questions surrounding Invictus finances. Prince Harry's project facing sponsor hesitation. Scott Snow's story hanging in the background like a question nobody wants to answer. Too many threads, too many patterns. And then comes the most brutal line of all, the one nobody can ignore anymore. What if Invictus survives, but only without Prince Harry? It sounds unthinkable, cruel even, but it's being said, quietly, repeatedly. The idea that the very presence of Prince Harry, once the greatest strength of Invictus, might now be the risk sponsors are calculating. David Beckham's name gets floated. Mike Tyndall's name appears. Even Tom Brady enters the conversation, not as replacements officially, but as possibilities, alternatives. And the moment alternatives exist, something fundamental has already shifted, because Invictus was never supposed to be replaceable, and Prince Harry was never supposed to be questioned inside it. Yet here we are. The games are not officially canceled. That matters. The Birmingham 2027 dates still exist. The government backing is still there. On paper, everything holds, but beneath the surface, the questions don't disappear, they multiply. Where did the $63 million go? Why were grants cut while income rose? Why do sponsors hesitate? Why does Scott Snow's story feel unfinished? And why does Prince Harry now stand at the center of every single one of those questions? This isn't collapse, not yet, but it isn't stability either. It's something far more dangerous. It's a slow shift, and the kind of shift that doesn't announce itself until it's already too late.